Hello and welcome to YHTV's nominated show, Magical Medical Tour. This is episode 92. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Christina Suzama, and with me is our wonderful medical guide, Dr. Glenn Woolman. Hello, Dr. Woolman.
Greetings, Christina, and greeting everyone else. Welcome to Magical Medical Tour. I am Dr. Glenn Woolman. I will be your medical guide today, along with Christina, as we travel through another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy in search of optimal health. And I know we're probably going to have some great optimal health today because we have our returning champion, Kabir Southwick, who is our Ayurvedic practitioner and a natural healer. He's an author and a lecturer. And for those of you who have not seen Kabir before, I would really recommend that you go back and watch every single episode we did with Kabir, because in every one of them, there's, as we say in medicine, there are pearls.
And of course, if you have any questions or comments for Dr. Glenn Woolman or for our wonderful guest, Kabir Southwick, please just scroll down on the screen and type it into that comment box, and we will get back to you. Or you can call us directly at 818-LETS-TALK, 818-LETS-TALK. And be sure, if you're going to leave a message, be sure to let us know how to contact you back with an answer. Thank you so much.
Nice. We look forward to those too.
Yes, we sure do. Boy, some of those questions are great, aren't they?
They're really good. And sometimes the comments, we know it gives us the opportunity to understand that what we're doing makes sense because we're trying to help people. And it really does seem that there are people out there that have a lot of the issues that we bring up here, and they're getting good advice from all of our guests.
Absolutely.
And speaking of guests, let's bring Kabir on. Greetings, Kabir. How are you today?
Feeling good today.
You look great.
Thank you for having me back again.
It's always a pleasure, Kabir. I want to keep having you back to see how many costumes you have.
I'm a man of many hats.
Yes, I would say.
You may start a trend with us. I may have to start wearing some hats, Kabir. So Kabir, over our many episodes, we really concentrate on many aspects of health and from the Ayurvedic point of view. And one of the biggest issues going on today is weight management. And it's usually about lack of management, so to speak. Many people are overweight. Obesity is a pandemic around the world now. And it's not just about weight, because that translates into many diseases, heart diseases and strokes and diabetes and a number of other issues that people have. So I thought it would be really important to look from an Ayurvedic point of view of weight management, which not only includes weight reduction, but also in many cases, people have to maintain weight. And in certain cases that I want to talk about first, people actually have to gain weight, and we'll get into that. So for me, in the Western world, we certainly look at weight, we look at height, we look at when we're trying to evaluate somebody in terms of the appropriate weight, we look at their height, we look at the circumference around their waist, we look at lean body mass, and we look at body mass index. People have heard of BMI, total body waters, lean muscle and lean fat, and percentages of body fat. And we come up with ideas for people, and then we put them on certain types of diets. As an Ayurvedic practitioner, how do you look at weight?
Well, I'd like to first preface by saying that even though I'm here to discuss weight management from the Ayurvedic perspective, I have to honestly say that much of what I'm sharing today will be my experience. As much as I wish to follow as strictly as possible Ayurvedic teachings, there's always that element of our own experience. So I want to say that up front, that this is not purely a lesson in Ayurveda, but more of my own experience and understanding from working with people for over 20 years and helping them to better manage their weight. However, my principles and approaches are always based on Ayurveda.
I think that's
But
No, I was going to say, I think that's a very good point, because I know that in medicine also, of course, in Western medicine, we learn many things going through school and training, but at the end of the day, our experiences also come into play, and that's a very important part of the practice, as it should be.
Yes, I just want to make that clear. This wouldn't be a course in Ayurveda weight management, but more my understanding from my experience, because our training and background is obviously more than just Ayurveda, including nutrition, and this obviously plays a part in therapies. But I will say that Ayurveda perceives weight in a different way than the Western mind. Ayurveda does traditionally view a little extra weight as healthy. So if we could compare the three body types, the Kapha, Vata, and Pitta, the Ayurveda sees the Kapha with a little extra body weight, maybe 10 pounds, 5 to 10 pounds more, um, as healthy. It's just traditionally seen as a person who's obviously well-to-do, well-fed, and has a little extra body fat and isn't going to panic if there's a shortage of food. So traditionally, a little more body fat is considered healthier in Ayurveda, and the Kapha body type is, when not overweight, is considered a healthy body shape. Uh, Now, in the West, we have more of a focus on the Vata or Vayu body type, which is thin with very little body fat, maybe less than 10% body fat. And Ayurveda sees this as, in most cases, as underweight. And many Vata people who come to me for other Vata imbalances, anxiety, insomnia, um, anxiety, nervousness, restlessness, these irregular appetite, etc. I often recommend or help them to put on weight. And in fact, the Vata balancing diet is a weight gaining diet. So most Vatas who are, 110 pounds at 5'5" height, um, this low weight, clearly thin bones, very little extra fat on their skin, and very little extra body fat, generally do much better with another 5 or 10 pounds. Helps them to relax, helps them to sleep better, brings down their anxiety, reduces nervousness between meals, reduces even cravings, and improves in many ways to balance out the vata. So overall, the Ayurvedic perspective on weight is not the same as the Western view of looking for this very thin vata shape. So Ayurveda looks at a person and first understands their dosha or body type, and then can determine if they're overweight or underweight. So many kaphas come to me and want to lose 10, 20 pounds, and I do not consider this their main priority or a large concern. And many Vata types would like to lose 5 or 10 pounds, and I also don't even feel it's necessary. So the view of Ayurveda in this regard is very different than in the West.
Well, Kabir, I have a question for you, and it pertains to a lot of the elderly that I work with. It seems like, especially of Asian descent, the body frame is much smaller, and whether they be the Vata or the Pitta or the Kapha, I find that a lot of, especially the women, the females, tend to begin to lose weight as they get older. And yet in the Western when they see their Western doctors, it's always like, "Oh, you're underweight, you're underweight," and I always say, "Well, of course, you're much different frame and body type to the European body," and they always encourage them to gain so much more weight. It was, I mean, for an example, my mother is almost 20 pounds underweight in the Western world, and yet she is so healthy and strong. Doing in her late 80s and doing a lot of exercise every day. But clearly, she doesn't consume as much as she used to, and yet they always say that she is too underweight. So, how do you, in the Ayurvedic world, feel about our elders being underweight?
Well, that's quite a question there. Generally, you do see people put on more weight, particularly the kapha, as they age, women as they go through these hormonal transitions later in life. Um, but I think there's many factors here in the West that contribute to our weight gain that are not as prevalent in other countries, particularly the hormones that are put into foods. I don't want to get into that subject. I'm no expert in that area, but I think these phytoestrogens, hormones that have been added to our animal proteins, and even birth control pills and hormone replacement therapy has, in my own opinion, um, adversely affected the hormonal balance of many women, which contributes to weight gain, um, not only later in life but throughout their life. But I do believe that many elderly that I see here are underweight, and they may be perceived as healthy in one regard. But if you question the underweight person about certain issues like their sleep, you may find that they're still restless. You may find that the person is healthy and vigorous and very active in the day, but having difficulty sleeping well at night. You may find that active person actually, if you get to know them, has more anxiety and restlessness. And of course, um, even bowel movements can be an issue if there's not enough fiber in the diet, and there can be constipation. So these would be areas that I'd want to question uh, an elderly person of any descent, and see if these typical signs of being underweight, or if you could say symptoms of being underweight, are there. If they're not, then I would have very little concern over it. But if these symptoms were there, then I would also recommend a little bit more weight, which amazingly helps with these symptoms, as I mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Kabir. That's quite an
Yeah,
answer.
Yeah. As quite a question.
Thank you.
yeah. Kabir, I want to, of course, everybody is probably listening, waiting to hear how to reduce weight. But I think it's important that we look at weight management first from the bigger point of view and understand that there are many people that do need to gain weight. Somebody that just went through chemotherapy or radiation or cancer treatment, and they're very underweight. So how do you work with someone to help them gain weight?
That's an excellent question, and often ignored here in a Western society because we have this perception of being thin as being healthy. So I do get elderly mostly, and people of all ages who come in, and the doctor says that they're fine, they're healthy, but they have many of these symptoms which I just mentioned of being underweight, and they are sometimes quite aware that they're underweight. Maybe, like you said, if they've been through some type of medical treatment or stress or long periods of anxiety or depression, this Vata type will tend to, being very sensitive, will tend to not eat. But when you have abdominal pain, then a person has lost their appetite and their interest in eating, and they become weak and frail and underweight. So in these cases, which are generally going to, or we consider them Vata imbalances, generally the Vata type is the most susceptible to them, even though the other types Pitta and Kapha and the subcategories could also have them. But generally, you'll see 80% of the time this will be the Vata person. And the main therapy is the Vata balancing diet, which goes against kind of Western conventional thinking. It's a very rich diet, a diet high in carbohydrates, starches, sweet potatoes with butter, high in fat and oil, pouring olive oil all over everything, putting butter all over your meals, eating 4 meals a day, having lots of rice and starchy root vegetables. Ayurveda really breaks down vegetables in many categories. They'd never say just have 4 helpings of vegetables. So for the Vata type or this type of person who's got a Vata imbalance, they'd focus mostly on the root vegetables. This is where the high concentration of minerals are. We have the roots, we have the stems, we have the leaves, we have the flowers, we have the seeds, and they all have different actions and properties. But it's the roots, the potatoes, the beets, the carrots, sweet potato, and to a lesser degree the onion, garlic, and the leeks. These give substance and weight, literally weight. I mean, root vegetables are the heaviest of all the vegetables. A potato compared with a salad is very different. So a person who's overweight, Ayurveda will give light foods, salads, and leafy greens. And person who's underweight, they give them root vegetables and heavy foods, sweet potatoes, and those other root vegetables that I mentioned. So this is just a general overview, but it's basically a lot of cooked root vegetables, 4 meals a day, quite a bit of oil, maybe as much as 5-6 tablespoons a day, quite liberal. Use of butter, animal proteins, even if a woman, particularly a menstruated woman, is weak and debilitated and has just gone through menstruation, then even 1 week of having either a bone broth or a small amounts of meat 2 or 3 times a day will help rejuvenate her and give her strength. And of course, we know the iron that she may be lacking. So, and all dairy products, cheese, butter, milk, these are all very nurturing. I often get people who are thin and underweight and frail, and they've been on excessive detoxification programs, long-term cleanses, been on restrictive diets such as a vegan diet or raw diet for extended periods of time, and they have become frail due to these dietary habits. And they're very surprised when I swing them the other way and tell them to put in the butter, put in the yogurt, have yogurt drinks in between meals. A great drink for this person who's underweight and frail and has a poor digestion or sensitive digestion is a type of a lassi drink where you get 1/2 cup of yogurt, 1/2 cup of water, put it in a blender with 3 dates without the pits, 5 almonds, and some spices like cumin, ginger, and a pinch of salt. And you blend this up in the blender and you drink this in between meals. And it's very, very nourishing, very comforting for the intestinal tract, and it increases the mucosa in the intestinal lining, and it puts on weight. Dates are very good at putting on weight. So is dairy products, sweet fruit, the very sweet fruit, bananas, dates, figs. Sweeter the better, basically. So it doesn't take long to put on weight. In Ayurveda, we're always much happier to have somebody who's a little underweight than overweight because it's much quicker and results are much faster. I have one testimonial on my website that I didn't understand when the person gave it to me, and she said, "Thank you very much, Kabir. Now I have my sweet cheeks are back." So I go, that's strange. I don't know. What is this she talking about? My sweet cheeks are back. So I asked her to clarify her testimonial. And she said, "Oh, that's my butt. My butt's fat. I had no butt." I think she gave me a few more details as she became a little more voluptuous and put on a little weight. And her husband was pleased with that. So that's why I got the testimonial. So I always say to the thin types that, men, we like a padding. We like a little, too bony isn't good. But I'm not an expert in this area, so we'll proceed.
What is it? Is this part of your training or your experience?
Now we're over to the experience. So
Kabir, when you work with someone and you're trying to get them to gain weight or to reduce their weight, how do you determine an ideal weight? I know that we always had this joke in emergency medicine that the ideal weight for every adult was 70 kilograms or 154 pounds. That was the ideal weight for everyone. And we used to joke about that. And the reason was that in many of the medications that are given during a cardiac arrest or during critical life-sustaining problems, all of the doses of medicines are based on a 70 kilogram male. So those were the doses that we always had in our mind that we could come up with as quickly as possible. So we always felt like, if I have to go in an ER, I hope I weigh 70 kilograms so the doctors will know exactly what to give me quickly.
But if you don't fall in that category, you're not so sure you're going to get the right dosage. Well, I'm not an expert in the medication. You are there, but Glenn. But like I said earlier, Ayurveda looks at the body type and the gender because women traditionally have more body fat on their body, and the Kapha generally has more body fat. The Vata has the least, and the Pitta tends to be the more balanced. So, and then secondly, I think we look at the symptoms. Like I said, if a person doesn't have the symptoms that would be harmful from a little extra weight, and they're still physically active, then it's of less concern to Ayurveda. A little extra weight, up to, I'd say, 15 extra pounds, is not a large concern for Ayurveda.
Mm.
It sure would be for a lot of people out here in California.
Yeah, the view is very different there, and you can often see a lot of Ayurvedic doctors and masters, tend to be a little bit even on the pudgy side. And I've heard comments before of Ayurvedic teachers about Ayurvedic teachers who are a little pudgy, but to them this is not considered overweight because they're looking at their health from a different perspective.
That brings up an interesting point for me in terms of Ayurvedic ways of looking at things. I know that, or at least I believe that we have the daily way of eating and eating the right foods at the right time of the day in the right order, etc. So we have that daily process. But I think in Ayurveda, and I look at some of your work, and there's also a seasonal process, a whole year way of looking at the way that we eat, and maybe we should be a little heavier during the winter months and a little lighter during the summer months. So could you put that into a perspective for us?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Glenn. And that's true. The best time to lose weight is in the spring, which is now, if your temperatures are warming up like they are here in Southern California. May have to wait a little longer for the northern states. And then as fall comes, we approach winter, generally we will put on more weight to thicken our skin and to protect ourselves from the colder winter months. And I've observed animals over time, particularly the squirrels living around my house, and we have a large almond tree and here. So in the fall, we get almonds falling all over the backyard. And the squirrels are collecting these up, eating them up, and you can see they're getting overweight and fat and plump. And I guess they eat these nuts all through the winter, and by spring they're running out, and they don't have any more nuts. and they're running around looking for little berries and smaller foods. So even even the animals themselves are on this natural cycle of putting on weight, protect in the fall, protecting their bodies with extra body fat during the winter, and then naturally losing this weight in the spring when the fall harvest comes out, which is of course lighter foods. If we look at the three major seasons are related to the three major harvests of spring, summer, and fall.
Hmm.
You know, it's, oh, go ahead, Christina.
So all the three body types, do they get affected the same way, where they should be gaining a little weight like closer to the winter months, and then the body naturally loses weight during the spring and summer months?
Well, generally for the kapha, if the kapha just the type that puts on weight the easiest and loses it the most difficult. Generally, for my kapha clients, I tell them during fall and winter, if you don't gain weight, consider it a success. Because just wait for the spring to lose your weight. Don't try to go on any type of weight loss regime during the late fall and the summer, because it's going to be much less work. You're really going upstream and against the grain. And for the vata type, generally they will be following the vata pacifying diet in the fall and the winter, and they should naturally put on weight during these periods. But I'm happy to get into some details about how each body type can lose weight. But I'd like to really address some of what Ayurveda sees as some of the first common causes for weight gain, since I think that's the main focus of our conversation. And in Ayurveda, it's understanding the cause of the gain that is the most critical. People stop me on the street and say, "Oh, what's your weight loss tip?" or "How can I lose weight like my friend who worked with you?" And then my answer is generally, "Well, why did you put on the weight?" Only when I know the cause can I help plan the remedy or procedure. And really, we shouldn't call it a remedy, because there's always multiple factors related to a weight gain. But the typical ones, which will be some will be no surprise, and some will be a surprise to you, are overeating, of course, heavy foods, a cold food, a refrigerated food, food that's left over, been taken out of the refrigerator, not heated up, not freshly cooked food, having too many meals, frequent meals, small meals like snacking throughout the day without a break between meals, excessive sleep, of course, lack of physical exercise. These are obvious ones. And of course, hormonal imbalances, which is really a subject of its own, can further complicate the issue. But others that we don't think of are high toxicity. High toxicity levels in the body are a more common reason for a weight gain than we realize. Another reason for weight gain is a liver congestion, gallbladder congestion. This, of course, inhibits our ability to produce bile, metabolize or emulsify a fat, break down the fat into fatty acids and absorb it properly, and can create weight gain in certain parts of the body. But Ayurveda also contributes many emotional factors, which nobody really can deny, to weight gain. And this obviously makes weight management very tricky because of these emotional factors. And these can include being overly attached, being overly sentimental, having grief and sadness in one's life, and also stress. For the vata type, a vata type of weight gain can often be related to stress, anxiety, or even a past trauma. And of course, now we know this is called adrenal fatigue syndrome, where past events of excessive stress and trauma have depleted the adrenal glands' ability to produce those essential hormones for our metabolism and energy, and a weight gain can result. But also just low self-esteem, low self-worth, insecurity. These are all can be factors in why a person can gain weight. So it really takes a quite a detailed questioning of the person's emotional factors, their self-esteem level, their stress levels, and that besides just eating habits and what they're eating. These are often focused on too much in here in the West of just what the person is eating, and they often come to me and say, "Well, I'm eating good food, but I'm still putting on weight, or I'm just not losing any weight. I've been eating good and I've been exercising for some time." Well, that's because they haven't taken into consideration many of these other factors. But in general terms, we could say low metabolism, high stress, or high toxicity, and a poor nutrition are the main categories that would contribute to weight gain, and main areas that I like to understand and would dictate the overall approach for somebody. As far as poor nutrition, we we could say that most people who are putting on weight have low digestive fire or low agni, which can be evident in their low appetite. When you have somebody who's not hungry for breakfast, skipping breakfast, not hungry till 2 o'clock, eating at 2, still really not that hungry, so just has a little meal and snacks, and not really, never having a strong appetite, or in Ayurvedic terms, having weak agni or digestive fire. Well, this results in more toxins or ama created in the body, less of these nutrients from this food, whether it's good food or poor food, is not absorbed. And then there's a certain malnutrition that takes place. And this, of course, triggers the mind to eat more because it's not getting the nutrition that it needs. So there's one example of a very vicious cycle of a poor digestion, which results in poor eating habits, and then results in low nutrition or malabsorption, malnutrition, and creates a cycle that needs to be broken. So this is a very common cycle, and you can't tell this person with this low metabolism, fatigue due to poor nutrition and weak digestion to start exercising because they don't have the energy to do it. So you have to approach this step at a time to improve the digestion with herbs, increase the spices in the diet, put more space between the meals until the digestive fire returns, and then digestion and absorption of nutrients returns, and the energy will come up. And then, of course, you can encourage a person to become more physically active. Another one area that I mentioned was high stress type. This is a very tricky type and often misdiagnosed by others because they come to me and they've tried restrictive diets where they're eating less, not having as many meals, and maybe even having stimulants and other type of herbs to stimulate their metabolism, but they become still putting on weight. And this is either the Vata type or in Ayurveda, the Vata Kapha type, which has a more stress and anxiety. And we often call it here the adrenal type in the West, where this person is putting on weight due to their stress and their anxiety. So restricting their diet, having them eat less or only 2 meals a day, or putting too much time between the meals would only create more stress. So it becomes very tricky in the sense that the person needs to keep eating. They need to have a regular meals, need to have breakfast, maybe even still continue with 4 meals a day to reduce their stress. So instead of focusing on weight loss, when I see that person that's been through trauma or is living a high stress life or has adrenal fatigue syndrome, even though they could be quite overweight, I will always focus on reducing the stress first, using nervines and other herbs to help them relax and reduce the anxiety down to the point which should help reduce their cravings. Often people will eat a lot of sweets to satisfy their nervous energy. So only when this nervous energy is reduced are we going to see an improvement in the eating habits. Then, of course, digestion, absorption, and a slow and then weight loss.
To
I
make
do want to
sure,
mention that.
Kabir,
Oh,
before you go on,
please.
Kabir, I want to make sure of something that we talked about a few moments ago. When we talk about going through the cycles of the season, a little bit of weight gain, a little bit of weight loss. One of the problems that we see in this country is people that go on crash diets, lose 30 pounds, and then they gain them back. And we find that it's actually the changes in the weight more than the actual weight that could sometimes be harmful to people. So I want to make sure that in talking about this, and then we'll get back into the toxins and the stress and those portions, how you work with people to make sure they don't gain too much weight, don't lose too much weight, but sort of stay in a maintenance program.
Yeah, so I think that's another reason even people put on weight is extreme dieting and
Mm-hmm.
trying to lose weight too quickly. Ayurveda generally advocates what would be called long-term reducing therapies, and only looks at a slow and steady long-term weight loss. If I can get a client to be losing even 2 or 3 pounds a month, then I'll say continue on that path and only contact me when you reach some plateau and it doesn't you're not losing at least 2 pounds a month. Well, often they feel impatient and they want to lose the weight faster and they ask for some herb or something to help them along. um, if you think of even one pound every 2 weeks, that's over 25 pounds in a year. So you can lose, and that weight will stay off if you lose it slowly, because what you've really done is not gone on a diet per se. You've improved your eating habits. You've addressed some of the core reasons why you put on weight in the first place, which there are many. And you are slowly, your body is not losing weight, it's balancing itself out. And the kapha will never come down to be a thin little person again. Kapha body will come down and to a certain point and will stop losing weight because that's its natural state.
Kabir, when you work with people, it seems that they come into you with problems that are based on many times an illness or an injury, but also about patterns of behavior. And these are the things that you alluded to before: taking in too many toxins, eating the wrong way, stressed out, not sleeping well. How do you, aside from saying to them, this is what you should be eating, how do you work with their patterns of behavior from an Ayurvedic or an experiential process?
Well, I'm not a psychiatrist and haven't had training in this regard. And sometimes people do need counseling to deal with many of their emotional factors that could be contributing to their weight gain, as I mentioned earlier. I try to be as motivating as possible. I only have limited time with people, so I try to encourage them to not be overly concerned about the losing weight and be obsessed with it, but to focus on these healthy habits and keep adding habits, new healthy habits to your life, whether it's drinking a weight loss tea in the day, whether it's taking mild laxatives at night. These small actions and habits which are helping to your body to balance uh, and to detoxify and increase the metabolism, increase the circulation, and reduce down water retention if necessary. These actions, I feel, is what's important. And if a person can see that they're just focusing on an action and like increasing bowel movements and noticing that this is helping them with their energy and their weight loss, then I encourage them to focus on that action and not on the weight loss, because the weight gain is more of a symptom than anything else, and the real causes need to be addressed. So once the person sees and agrees with me that these are the reasons they put on the weight, that gives them some peace of mind, and that gives them a path and a direction out of it. So that's really the most I can do for people with the limited time that I have, is to motivate them and make it as simple and clear as possible, their path of healthy weight again, and give them the tools that they need, which are often the herbs. And this is very, very important, because you can't just tell a person to eat better or eat less or not snack, and then it's all dependent on their willpower. If you give them an herb to help suppress their appetite between the meal, you've done half the job for them. And if you give them an herb to help increase their metabolism, you're obviously nudging them in the right direction, and they have these tools, these herbal tools to rely on. And many people say that without those herbs, without these tools, they just couldn't have done it. They didn't have the self-discipline or the strength or the support in their family. But the teas, the herbs, were their support. Many women told me that they just carried these herbs just all the time in their purse. For example, there's one called Germania sylvestre, which is a very bitter tasting herb that Ayurveda calls a sweet killer. And if you rub it on the frontal part of your tongue where your sweet taste buds are, it takes away the desire for sweets. In fact, if you eat something sweet like a juicy red grape, then you rub some of this on your tongue, then you throw in another juicy sweet red grape, it tastes like rubber. The sweet flavor is gone, and thus it takes away the desire to continue eating them. So this can be very helpful for somebody who keeps eating ice cream at night or sweets at night. After dinner, they can rub this on their tongue, and the desire for these sweets is greatly reduced. So I think this helps people not just physically to not have the sweet, but it also gives them a support, a tool, and it gives them confidence that they can do this along with their herbs.
So with this weight loss, I have a question for those people the numbers are going up in the last decade, who are on medication for depression. And I know that you stated very clearly early on that is a very fine line. It's a very difficult process, those people who are under anxiety and under stress. And there are so many that, even children now who are on these medications. And how does the Ayurvedic side help to balance with this other medication, so to say? Is there a way?
Well, I will say, because we were talking earlier about different causes of weight gain, but I have seen, just from my own experience, and Glenn would have more information on this specifically than myself, of course, being a medical doctor, that medication does contribute to, many medications do contribute to weight gain. But to answer your question, if a person has an emotional state, say depression, or the other side of the coin, anxiety, nervousness, and restlessness, these need to be addressed first from the Ayurvedic perspective before the weight loss. So the focus would be herbal formulas and therapies that are going to help with those mental conditions, whether it's depression or anxiety first. And this is often an issue with my clients, who sometimes drive very far to come see me to lose weight, and they're going out the door with herbs to put them to sleep, things to help them relax in the day, and other therapies that I encourage them to have, like warm oil massages and massaging their feet at night with oils, and other nervines to take to relax. But they came to me for weight loss, but they left the door with therapies to relax, because I explained to them, until you are able to improve your mental state, through some changes in your life, the recommendations I provided in the herbal formulas, then the weight loss will be very difficult. We'll be focusing on the wrong subject. And same with depression. If a person is very depressed and sad, then and they have the lethargic, no motivation. We're not just talking low metabolism or hypothyroidism, but feelings of depression. Then this needs to be addressed first. Same with hormonal balances. They need to be addressed first before there's a focus on weight loss. Many of my clients, I don't know if they're frustrated, but sometimes they've said to me 3 or 4 sessions in, when are we going to start focusing on weight loss? And I say, but I've known you now for 6 weeks and you have been losing weight. But they said, yeah, only 3 or 4 pounds. And I go, well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good since we're not focused on it. And you're still losing weight. So you can see the difference in thinking there, where I'm focused on their mental state and they're still focused on their abdomen.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Kabir, it seems to me that in a big picture, and I'm trying to go from big picture to small picture, forested trees at the same time. In a big picture, it's a whole lifestyle that someone has to come into and follow. When you talked before you mentioned vegan diets or other restrictive diets, you alluded to them as restrictive diets, whereas many people think that's the only way to eat. What is the lifestyle that a person needs to have in terms of the big picture so that they're maintaining weight, maintaining health, and going through life without being too restricted all the time and saying, oh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I need to have my cumin seeds, and it's 11 o'clock, I need to have my cardamom and curry powder. What is the lifestyle that a person needs to have to be in maintenance for you?
Well, you're right, Glenn. It's really a complete lifestyle transformation that's needed. And as you're aware, the weight is really the symptom of going in the wrong direction with many lifestyle habits, far beyond just eating unhealthy food. And Ayurveda approaches this, like all matters, from the dosha perspective. Now, so we could talk quickly about each of the 3 doshas, because that's the only way I can answer your question. But the kapha type, the one who tends to put on weight the easiest, the more full-bodied, voluptuous person, and are the one that we generally see has the largest weight issues, they do the best on the restrictive diet. So this is, it doesn't mean that it's not effective on all types. You have to just make sure you know the type of person that you're dealing with. So for the kapha, the general recommendations are a lot of vegetables, no animal protein, eating legumes or beans instead of any form of animal protein, using beans as the main source of protein is generally the best tactic for the kapha body type to start to lose weight and still keep eating. See, Ayurveda doesn't stop you from eating. They want you to keep eating, to keep the body nourished, to keep the body relaxed. There is intermediate fasting, 1 day a week fasting, annual spring fasting for the kapha types in particular. But the other 2 types generally don't require fasting. And as far as the diet for the kapha, they do require light grains. This would, from a scientific point of view, would be not the glutinous grains, and this is why we can see the crave, the policy here of avoiding all glutinous grains, because they are hard to digest and they do contribute to weight gain. So for the kapha, the lighter grains like amaranth, buckwheat, millet, and even quinoa, the type of seed which has become very popular. These light grains are very important. So if we look at this kapha diet, we can see that this is a very typical to the Western view of weight loss. No, very little animal protein, a lot of vegetables, non-glutinous grains or light grains. Ayurveda is much more specific. Instead of saying gluten-free, which is just really eliminating a wheat, barley, and a rye, Ayurveda focuses on the lighter grains that are literally much lighter and easier to digest, as I just mentioned, and using a lot of hot spices to increase the digestive fire, to increase the metabolism, chili, cayenne, using warming, heating vegetables like garlic, onions, peppers. These help with fat metabolism um, and uh, um, uh, and uh, and the burning of fat in the body, stimulating the appetite and before meals. So for the kapha type, it's an easy to understand weight loss approach, assuming we don't have all the other emotional issues are not a concern. We can focus on this diet of a lot of vegetables, beans, maybe rye and barley, and millet and light grains, and maybe even only 2 meals a day, a late breakfast and an early dinner, and having some apples as snacks. So it's a somewhat restrictive diet, but it works for the kapha. The kapha has the slow metabolism and the low appetite, and they do just fine with this somewhat restrictive diet. But
I
the
know
other
all the.
side of the coin is, please.
I was going to say, I know all the pittas out there are anxiously waiting to hear about their point of view.
Yes. Well, the pitta, they have the strongest appetite, and so they're generally their pitfall is in overeating, in being hungry all the time. They're just hungry all the time. And pittas are very athletic people. They like to exercise. They're generally physically active. These people we see surfing at 4 in the morning in the beach, and really running hard down the side of the road like they're in military training. These are generally the pitta types, and they feel very good to have this type of physical activity. But if they, for whatever reason, emotional or some other reason, they don't have this oomph anymore to exercise, and then combine that with that strong appetite they have, they can start putting on weight, even though it's not a natural for their body type. So generally, opposite of the kapha, who you want to kind of stimulate the appetite with the spices and the hot foods and get the metabolism going. With the pitta, it's the opposite. You need to cool down the appetite and often get them off of chili and hot foods and spicy foods and onions and garlic, which are stimulating their appetite. So it's a completely different approach. They do very well when you have a strong appetite, and particularly if you're young. You can have a lot of raw vegetables and raw salads because this are very hard to digest. A lot of raw vegetables. I mean, if you ever had a raw broccoli, you'll know what I mean. But if you're this pitta type and you really have a strong appetite, then eating large salads will literally cool you down. The salad is cold, it's not hot, it's cooling, which is the opposite of the pitta energy of hot. And they're hard to digest, so it's going to, use up the digestive capacity, and hopefully the person after the raw salad, will take away their appetite for 4 or 5 hours. And this is, of course, the harm of having too much raw salads. If you don't have a strong appetite and you're weak and frail and you're not hungry anyway, if you start eating just raw vegetables all the time, then your appetite can become worse, your digestion become worse, and your absorption of nutrients can diminish, and it could actually be counterproductive for you. But for the pitta with a strong appetite, they do very well with these raw salads. So many of the people who advocate a raw food diets are just eating a lot of raw vegetables all the time and juicing, which is cold. You're drinking a cold juice of a lot of vegetables. These are very good for the pitta type, and the people advocating themselves these diets generally are the pitta type. as is the case in most people advocating any diet, they're generally advocating what worked for them with complete disregard for the other types of digestive system states and body types that exist.
And
So I always warn people against uh, following what somebody else is advocating. If they say they lost 100 pounds and this is what they did, well, that may be suitable for their type. But if you're not their type, then I would not follow their advice.
how about the Vata?
The Vata type is the least likely to gain weight. If they do, it's generally, like I mentioned earlier, due to some stress, and their weight can come up very fast. And of course, they can lose weight very quick. So often, when we have a Vata type, I generally question them about the past. When did you put on the weight? Was there a trauma? Was there a surgery? Was there something in your life that took place? And generally, there is some type of highly stressful experience, like the loss of a loved one, a breakup, or a foreclosure in the house, or a car accident, or something that made them very stressed out, brought in fear, brought in more anxiety, which are typical to the Vata. But when they became to that extreme, then they started eating to comfort themselves, and overeating to make up for their nervousness, energy. So again, we just focus on the nervines, like ashwagandha, brahmi, or Western herbs, skull cap of valerian root, to help them to calm down, bring down the anxiety, bring down the nervousness, and not do a restrictive diet, which will only make them more nervous. Not to fast and not to have just juices and raw vegetables, which are hard to digest, but a more Vata pacifying diet. So, in fact, if you're a Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, you will be advised to still follow your Vata, Pitta, or Kapha diet, because balancing and keeping the body in balance is paramount to staying healthy. So this is a mistake often made, is that people follow this reduction or extreme diets when it's just not really suitable for their type, and they're not really addressing the root cause of why they put on weight.
Excellent. And I think your statement about keeping the body in balance is the key to all of this at all times, body and mind in balance. We're speaking with Kabir Southwick, our Ayurvedic practitioner and natural healer. And Kabir, we're coming to the end of the show. Do you have a health tip for us?
Yeah, I would say that eating on a regular schedule is very helpful for digestion and weight loss. Eating consistently at the same times, having your breakfast around the same time, having your lunch around the same time. Irregular eating habits create poor digestion. Poor digestion creates, ama, or toxicity and undigested food in the GI tract, and contributes to weight gain. So being consistent, eating on a regular schedule, whatever that is for you and what works best for you to keep you in balance. And the other tip, of course, I mentioned earlier, is not follow the weight guidelines of another person, but find the path that works for you. And don't think there's ever a silver bullet in weight loss. It's always requires lifestyle changes, dietary changes, and even changes about how you think about food. So it's not. There's no simple answer. There's no one T to do it. It does take some time, and slow weight loss is much healthier than fast and rapid weight loss to remain balanced and happy.
Great words of wisdom. I'm very grateful to our special guest, Kabir Southwick, along with Christina and Segovia and Yoga Hub. We thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. I would also like to thank my teachers and healers for helping me to be on my journey and taking me to where I am today. I look forward to getting together again on Magical Medical Tour when we search another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy, looking for optimal health. So until next week, I wish you all optimal health. And thank you so much, Kabir and Christina.
Thank you, Kabir, for another moment.
Thank you for having me, Christine.
For another moment of us trying to figure out how to keep balance with our diets. And of course, to you, Dr. Glenn Woolman, for hosting this wonderful moment, and to Segovia Smith and the Yoga Hub team for making it all possible. And of course, to each and every one of you for joining us in this new platform of education and information. We're always grateful for your continuous support and look forward to hearing your feedback on how we can serve you better. We invite you to join us live on Tuesdays for Magical Medical Tour at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, Wednesdays for Trinity of Life at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, followed every other week with Flowing into Awareness with Anatara. And of course, we look forward to bringing you some new shows this year, so keep an eye out for them. And if you would like to connect with Dr. Glenn Woolman, please follow him on Twitter at Glenn Woolman, and of course through his own site, glennwoolman.com, where I truly encourage you to learn more about his Metaphor Square Breath. And of course, you can always connect with our special guest, Kabir Southwick, at naturalhealingohio.com. Naturalhealingohio.com. So just in case, it's naturalhealingohio.com. And again, please give us a call. Share with us your comments and questions, and make sure that you leave a contact information for us to get back to you. Give us a call at 818-LETS-TALK. 818-LETS-TALK. And until next time, namaste.